The alien girl offered to share her sleeping bag with the human. What happened next was the biting cold of the cave seeped through Jason Archer's flight suit like it wasn't even there. His teeth shattered uncontrollably as he huddled against the rocky wall, cursing the emergency landing system that had saved his life but deposited him in this frozen hellhole of a planet. Shit, he muttered, rubbing his hands together frantically. His breath formed dense clouds in the frigid air. Some rescue mission. This turned out to be the mission brief had mentioned nothing about the planet's extreme temperature fluctuations. What had been a merely chilly afternoon when he crash-landed had transformed into a bone-crushing cold that threatened to freeze him solid before the morning. Your body temperature is dropping dangerously, came a melodic voice from across the cave. At this rate, hypothermia will set in within 20 minutes. Jason looked up at his companion Yuria, the very alien he'd been sent to extract after her own ship had crashed 3 days earlier. The Intelligence Division had described her as a valuable asset with critical information they'd failed to mention. She was stunningly beautiful. Her bright green skin seemed to shimmer with an inner light, casting faint emerald shadows across the cave walls. Long silvery hair cascaded down her back, moving like liquid mercury with each graceful movement. Her golden eyes with their vertical pupils studied him with scientific curiosity. Thanks for the diagnosis, Jason replied through chattering teeth. Got any solutions to go with it? Yuria tilted her head. A gesture he'd noticed she made when considering something. Her slender form moved with fluid grace as she approached a small pack she'd salvaged from her own crash. From it she extracted what looked like a tightly folded piece of golden fabric. I have a thermal cocoon, she said, her voice carrying no hint of the cold that was slowly killing him. It's designed to reflect and amplify body heat. Great, Jason said, struggling to keep his voice steady. Toss it over. Yuria's lips curved into a smile that made his already racing heart skip a beat. It won't work that way. The cocoon requires a heat source to amplify. Your current body temperature is insufficient, so I'm screwed. Jason laughed bitterly. Perfect end to a perfect day. Not necessarily, Yuria replied, her golden eyes gleaming in the dim light of their emergency beacon. My species maintains a core temperature approximately 12 degrees higher than yours. I could serve as the primary heat source. She began unfolding the cocoon, which expanded into what looked like a high-tech sleeping bag glowing with a soft golden light. Then, with the casual confidence of someone completely at ease with their body, she began unfastening the clasp of her form-fitting suit. Well, what are you doing? Jason asked, his eyes widening. Yuria paused, looking at him with genuine confusion. To maximize heat transfer, we need direct skin contact. Is this a problem? Jason swallowed hard. Where I come from, getting naked with someone you just met is usually complicated. Fascinating, she said, continuing to remove her clothing without hesitation. On my world, survival takes precedence over social customs. As the last piece of her suit fell away, Jason couldn't help but stare. Her green skin glowed with a subtle luminescence, perfectly smooth over the curves of her athletic body. Despite her alien features, her form was remarkably humanoid, yet undeniably alien in its perfection. Your cultural hesitation is noted, she said, with a hint of amusement in her voice. But your body temperature continues to drop. Will you choose survival or modesty? Jason looked at the thermal cocoon, then back at Yuria's expectant face. His training had covered first contact protocols, diplomatic procedures, and emergency extraction techniques. Nothing had prepared him for this survival. He finally said, his fingers fumbling with the clasp of his flight suit. A wise choice, Yuria replied, her golden eyes watching him with undisguised interest. Minutes later they lay side by side in the thermal cocoon, her surprisingly warm skin pressed against his. The sensation was unlike anything Jason had experienced, like lying next to a perfectly contoured heating element that smelled faintly of exotic spices. Your heart rate has increased significantly, Yuria observed, her face inches from his. Is this a stress response? Something like that, Jason muttered, trying to maintain some semblance of professional detachment despite their intimate position. Interesting, she whispered, shifting slightly closer. Your species' physiological responses are quite reactive. Jason felt warmth returning to his extremities, though whether from the thermal cocoon or his own embarrassment Was hard to determine, just part of our charm, he managed to reply as the life-saving heat enveloped him. Jason found himself looking into Yuria's golden eyes, suddenly aware that this rescue mission had just become far more complicated than he had anticipated. "I'll rest now," she said softly. "Tomorrow we can discuss why your government was so eager to find me." Jason closed his eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing against him. "Tomorrow," he agreed, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Jason awoke to an unfamiliar sensation of warmth enveloping his body. For a moment he forgot where he was until he felt the gentle rise and fall of Yuria's chest against his back, her arm draped casually across his torso, her green skin radiating heat like a personal furnace. "Your sleep patterns are fascinating," she murmured against his ear. "Apparently already awake, you humans make the most interesting sounds." Jason cleared his throat, suddenly aware of their continued nakedness within the thermal cocoon. I don't snore." "Not snoring," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement, "more like purring, similar to the juvenile Nexarian cubs on my home world." "Great," Jason muttered. "I remind you of a baby animal." He felt her body shake with silent laughter. "A compliment, I assure you. Nexarian cubs are highly praised for their resilience and adaptability." Jason shifted to face her, immediately regretting the decision as it brought them nose to nose within the confined space. Her golden eyes studied him with unabashed curiosity, pupils dilating slightly in the dim morning light filtering through the cave entrance. "Sleep well?" he asked, attempting casual conversation while acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. "My species requires less rest than yours," she replied. "I'd spent much of the night studying your physiological responses to various stimuli." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You were experimenting on me while I slept." "Observing," she corrected. "Your temperature stabilized quite rapidly after our initial contact." "Fascinating adaptation." "That's me, adaptable," Jason said, trying to ignore how her silvery hair spilled across the thermal cocoon, catching the light and hypnotic patterns. "We should probably get moving. My rescue team will be looking for my beacon." Yuria's expression shifted subtly. "About that, there's something you should know." Before she could continue, a low rumbling sound echoed through the cave. Jason felt it more than heard it, a vibration through the stone beneath them. "What was that?" he whispered. Yuria's body tensed against his. "The reason I crashed on this planet, it wasn't an accident." "You're saying you came here deliberately?" Jason asked, his training kicking in despite their intimate position. "Intelligence said your ship malfunctioned." "A convenient explanation for your superiors," she replied, her golden eyes now scanning the cave entrance. "I was tracking a void hunter, what a predatory species that travels through space by creating temporary wormholes," as she explained, her voice dropping lower. "They're drawn to energy signatures like your rescue beacon." As if on cue, the rumbling intensified. Small pebbles dance across the cave floor. "We need to move," Yuria said suddenly, all business as she slipped from the thermal cocoon with fluid grace, her naked form momentarily distracting Jason before the urgency of the situation registered. He followed suit, grabbing for his flight suit while trying not to stare as she efficiently dressed herself. "You're telling me you crashed here on purpose to hunt some space monster?" Jason asked, zipping up his suit. "And now it's hunting us?" "Not exactly," Yuria replied, packing the thermal cocoon with practice efficiency. "I'm part of an intra-seas task force tracking void hunter movements. This one has been responsible for the disappearance of 3 research vessels in this sector." Jason ran a hand through his tousled hair. "And my government sent me here to rescue you without telling me any of this. Your superiors likely didn't know," she said, checking a device on her wrist that pulsed with alien symbols. "My mission is classified even within the coalition." The rumbling grew louder and a shower of dust fell from the cave ceiling. "So what's the plan?" Jason asked, checking his sidearm standard issue for rescue missions, though he doubted it would do much against whatever was approaching. Yuria paused, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're taking this rather well for someone who just discovered they've been dropped into a hunting expedition." Jason shrugged, a half-smile forming. "Despite the danger, not the first time I've been sent in blind. Won't be the last." Something flickered in her golden eyes. "Respect, perhaps." "Adaptable indeed," she murmured, their eyes locked, and for a moment the impending danger receded. The intimacy of their night together hung between them, unacknowledged but Undeniable. Jason felt a pull toward her that transcended the physical warmth they'd shared, something more primal, more complex. Yuria stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his face with surprising gentleness. Last night it wasn't just about survival for me. Jason swallowed hard. Me neither. The cave shuddered again, breaking the moment. Yuria's expression hardened into determination. We need to reach higher ground. The Void Hunter hunts through seismic sensing. As they gathered their minimal supplies, Jason found himself watching the graceful efficiency of her movements, remembering the feel of her skin against his. Whatever happened next, their relationship had irrevocably shifted from rescuer and rescue to something far more complicated and, strangely, despite the danger closing in around them, Jason couldn't bring himself to regret it. They fled the cave just as the entrance collapsed behind them, a cloud of ice crystals and stone dust billowing outward like a frozen explosion. Jason felt the ground trembling beneath his boots as they sprinted across the barren, snow-covered landscape. What exactly is the plan here? He shouted over the rumbling that seemed to follow them like an invisible tide. Area pointed toward a jagged ridge of a dark stone jutting from the snow about half a kilometer ahead. Those formations should mask our vibrations temporarily. They ran in perfect synchronization, their bodies instinctively matching pace. Jason noted how easily they moved together, as if they'd trained side by side for years rather than met just yesterday. When they reached the ridge, Yuria pulled him into a narrow crevice between two towering slabs of obsidian-like rock. The space was tight, forcing them close together, their breath mingling in the frigid air. The Void Hunter can't sense us through this mineral, she explained, her golden eye scanning the horizon. It disrupts their seismic tracking. Jason nodded, trying to control his breathing. Good to know. Now maybe you can tell me about these specialized weapons you apparently have. Ira's expression shifted to surprise. How did you? I'm a rescue specialist, he interrupted with a half-smile. Reading people, even green ones, is part of the job. You've been checking that device on your wrist since we left the cave, and you're way too calm for someone who's just running away. A look of respect crossed her features. Perceptive. Yes, I have a weapon system designed specifically to combat Void Hunters. It creates a resonance field that disrupts their ability to form wormholes. So why aren't we using it? Iria hesitated, her silver hair catching the alien planet's pale sunlight. It requires calibration. What kind of calibration? She turned to face him fully, her expression suddenly intense. The weapon system was designed by the Coalition to be species neutral, requiring two distinct biological signatures to activate its full potential, a safeguard against any single species using it unilaterally. Jason raised an eyebrow. And let me guess, you need a human signature? Not just any human, she replied, her voice dropping lower. One with whom I've established a biological resonance. What now? Yuria stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his chest where his heart beat steadily. When we shared the thermal cocoon, our bodies began a process of bioenergetic synchronization. My species can form temporary physiological bonds with compatible life forms. Compatible? Jason echoed, suddenly very aware of her proximity. Remarkably so, she said, her golden eyes dilating slightly. The night we spent together initiated the process, but for the weapon system to recognize our combined signature, we would need to deepen that connection. The implication hung in the air between them. Jason felt his pulse quicken under her touch. You're saying we need to? He trailed off, uncertain how to phrase it. Join, she finished. Simply, completely. Jason ran a hand through his hair, processing this information. That's quite a tactical requirement. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Is the prospect so unpleasant? Not at all, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. But where I come from, there's usually dinner first. Her laughter was like wind chimes, unexpected and musical. My people believe that survival situations reveal one's true nature more clearly than any formal courtship ritual. And what does my true nature tell you? Jason asked, finding himself drawn closer to her. Yuria's hand moved from his chest to the side of his face, her touch sending warmth cascading through him. Despite the cold, that you are brave, adaptable, and far more intriguing than I anticipated. When I detected your ship entering orbit, the ground trembled faintly beneath them, a reminder of the danger still hunting them. How long before it finds us? Jason asked, his hand instinctively moving to her waist. Ours, perhaps, she replied. These formations will confuse it temporarily, but Void Hunters are persistent. Jason nodded slowly, his gray eyes holding her golden ones, and after this joining, how long before the weapon is calibrated? The resonance field would be operational almost immediately, she said, but the process itself. Her lips curved into a smile that sent heat coursing through his veins. That depends entirely on us. The tension between them had been building since that first night in the thermal cocoon, a connection that transcended their different species. Different worlds now, with danger circling them and time running short. That tension crystallized into something urgent and undeniable. I've never, Jason began, then paused. I mean with a non-human. Yuria's eyes sparkled with amusement. I assure you the fundamental principles remain the same across compatible species, though I may surprise you in some respects. As if to demonstrate, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The contact sent a jolt through Jason's body. Her lips were warmer than a human's, carrying a faint taste of something like cinnamon and ozone. The sensation was foreign yet incredibly enticing. When they parted, Jason found himself breathless. That's definitely promising, Yuria smiled, taking his hand and leading him deeper into the crevice where the rocks formed a small sheltered alcove. Then let us forge this resonance, Jason. Archer, for tactical purposes, of course. Shahi agreed with a grin, following her into the alcove. Purely tactical. The pale light of dawn filtered through the narrow opening of their rocky shelter, casting ethereal patterns across Yuria's green skin. Jason watched her sleep, marveling at how the biological resonance they had established had changed everything. Her silver hair spilled across his chest, and the steady rhythm of her breathing matched his own. Perfect synchronization. He gently traced the luminescent patterns that had appeared on her skin during their joining. Intricate swirls that pulsed with a soft glow. His own body bore similar markings. Now, though fainter and golden rather than silver, they are resonance patterns. Yuria murmured, her eyes still closed. The visible manifestation of our bioenergetic bond. You're awake, Jason said softly. She confirmed, golden eyes opening to meet his. I've been monitoring your thought patterns. They're you surprisingly peaceful for someone in our situation. Jason raised an eyebrow. You can read my mind now. Not thoughts precisely, she clarified, propping herself up on one elbow. More like emotional states. It's a temporary effect of the resonance. Convenient, he replied with a smile. So what am I feeling right now? Her I studied him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see beyond the surface. Contentment, curiosity, and something deeper. Something your species might call a sharp beeping from the device on her wrist interrupted the moment. Yuria's expression shifted instantly from warm intimacy to alert professionalism as she checked the display. The weapon is fully calibrated, she announced, sitting up completely, and it's detecting the Void Hunter. It's circling back toward us. Jason sat up as well, his body still humming with the after effects of their connection. Then let's go hunting. They dressed quickly, the easy intimacy of moments before replaced by efficient preparation. Yuria removed a small metallic sphere from her pack, no larger than an apple but covered in intricate engraving that seemed to shift and change as Jason watched the resonance disruptor. She explained, now keyed to our combined biological signature. How does it work? It creates a field that prevents the Void Hunter from forming wormholes, she said, making adjustments to the device without its primary means of attack and escape. We can. Another alert sounded different from the first day. Series of 3 ascending tones. Yuria froze, her golden eyes widening. What is it? Jason asked, instantly alert to her change in demeanor. Coalition signal, she whispered, checking her wrist device. Again, a retrieval team. They must have detected the weapon activation. That's good news, right? Jason asked, reaching for his jacket. Reinforcements. Yuria's expression remained troubled. It's complicated. Before she could elaborate, the ground beneath them shuddered violently, not the rhythmic tremors of the Void Hunter but a single powerful impact. They've landed, Yuria said, her voice suddenly tight. We need to move now. They emerged from their shelter into the harsh daylight, squinting against the glare reflecting off the snow in the distance. A sleek vessel had touched down, all smooth curves and iridescent metal that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. You're right home? Jason asked. Yuria didn't answer. Immediately her attention focused on the resonance disruptor in her hands. The Void Hunter is approaching from the east. The coalition team from the west were caught between them. Then we pick a direction, Jason said pragmatically. Your people are the monster. It's not that simple, Yuria replied, finally meeting his I's humanity isn't a member of the coalition. Their protocols are explicit. Non-member species are not to be extracted from conflict zones regardless of circumstances. Jason felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's frigid atmosphere. They won't take me, no. She confirmed, her voice tight. They won't. The implications hung between them there. Newfound connection suddenly complicated by interstellar politics. So what happens now? He asked, keeping his voice steady. Uria's golden eyes held as the conflict within them visible. Protocol dictates I return with the team and provide the resonance disruptor for analysis. You would be left behind to face the Void Hunter alone. Jason finished for her. Yes. 3 figures emerged from the coalition vessel. Humanoid but clearly not human. Their movements too fluid, their proportions slightly wrong. They wore armor that seemed to flow around their bodies like liquid metal. Your team? Jason asked. Yes, Yuria confirmed, her gaze still locked with his. Jason, I commander. Yuria? A voice called across the snow, amplified somehow to reach them clearly despite the distance. Return to the vessel immediately. The target has been located. Jason watched emotions play across Aria's face. Duty wearing was something else, something that had bloomed between them in the thermal cocoon and grown stronger with each passing hour. They'll expect you to follow orders, he said quietly. Yes, she whispered. The resonance disruptor clutched tightly in her hands. They will. The ground trembled again, the Void Hunter drawing closer from the opposite direction. Time was running out. Yuria looked from the coalition team to Jason, then down at the weapon they had activated together. The resonance patterns on her skin pulsed once brightly as if responding to her emotional turmoil. What happens next? She said softly, echoing the words she'd spoken when first offering to share her thermal cocoon. Is entirely up to us. Commander Yuria, your immediate return is non-negotiable. The coalition officer's voice cut through the frigid air with mechanical precision. Jason watched Yuria's internal struggle play across her features, then inspiration struck him like lightning. They don't understand what we've created, he whispered urgently, taking her hand. The resonance patterns on their skin brightened at the contact, pulsing in perfect synchronization. This bond, it's unprecedented, isn't it? Her golden eyes widened. In all coalition records there's never been a successful resonance between an ion and a human. Then that's our leverage, Jason said, squeezing her hand. They can't afford to leave half of a unique scientific breakthrough behind. Before Yuria could respond, a deafening roar split the air. The ground beneath them buckled violently, sending them stumbling 50 m away. The snow erupted as something massive and dark burst through the surface. The Void Hunter had arrived. Jason caught only glimpses of it through the flying debris, a writhing mass of shadowy tendrils surrounding a core that seemed to bend light around it, creating a visual distortion like heat waves over desert sand. It towered at least 15 m high, its form constantly shifting and pulsating by the void. Yuria breathed. It's fully materialized. The coalition team reacted instantly, deploying what appeared to be energy weapons from their liquid metal armor. Beams of pale blue light sliced through the air toward the creature, but the Void Hunter simply shifted the beams past harmlessly through spaces where solid mass had been moments before. Their weapons are useless, Yuria said, activating the resonance disruptor. They don't have the biological key we created. The Void Hunter swung toward the coalition ship, apparently recognizing it as the greater threat. A distortion formed in the air before it, the beginning of a wormhole. It's going to attack their vessel, Jason shouted without hesitation. He grabbed Yuria's hand and sprinted toward the coalition team, dragging her along. We need to get closer for the disruptor to work. She matched his pace. The weapon held out before them. The range is limited. We need to be within 20 m. The coalition officers turned toward them, weapons raised uncertainly as the human Anthetherin approached. Hold your fire, Yuria shouted in their language, a series of musical tones Jason couldn't hope to replicate. We have the only effective weapon. The lead officer, taller than the others with armor that gleamed with subtle iridescence, hesitated, then barked in order. The team parted, creating a path for Jason and Yuria. They raced past the coalition officers toward the Void Hunter, which was now fully focused on creating its wormhole attack. The air around it shimmered and distorted, reality itself seeming to fold inward. Now, Yuria called when they reached optimal range. Together they activated the resonance disruptor. The device hummed to life, the engravings on its surface aligning with the patterns on their skin. A wave of golden silver energy erupted outward, washing over the Void Hunter. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The creature's form solidified, Its ability to face and shift suddenly compromised the wormhole collapsed with a thunderous implosion that knocked everyone to the ground. The Void Hunter shrieked a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. It thrashed wildly, tendrils lashing out in all directions. The disruptor worked, Jason shouted over the chaos, but it's still dangerous one. Massive tendril swept toward them. Jason shoved Yuria aside, taking the brunt of the impact. The blow sent him flying through the air, landing hard several meters away. Pain exploded through his side. Through blurring vision he saw the Coalition team engaging the now vulnerable creature, their weapons finally finding purchase in its solidified form. Area was at his side in an instant, her hands moving over his body with practice. Deficiency 3 broken ribs, she diagnosed. Possible internal bleeding. Worth it, Jason grunted through clenched teeth. The lead Coalition officer approached, regarding them with an unreadable expression. The human sacrificed himself to protect you, he stated, his voice translated through some unseen technology. Yes, Yuria replied, not looking up from tending to Jason as any Coalition member would, except he is not Coalition, the officer observed. Or perhaps he should be, Yuria countered, finally meeting the officer's gaze. This resonance bond we've formed is unprecedented in Coalition records. The biological compatibility between our species has never been documented. The officer studied the glowing patterns visible on their skin where their clothing didn't cover. Fascinating, and this bond allowed the weapon to function. It's not just a weapon, Jason said, wincing as he sat up with Yuria's help. It's proof that humans and Theorans can form connections. Your science thought impossible. Behind them, the remaining Coalition team members had subdued the Void Hunter, encasing it in some form of containment field. The lead officer seemed to come to a decision. The council will want to study this phenomenon. Both specimens must be preserved for analysis. Specimens, Jason muttered under his breath. Yuria squeezed his hand in warning. We would be honored to contribute to Coalition knowledge, or she replied diplomatically. The officer nodded once, then turned to supervise the Void Hunter's containment. Did we just get invited to alien prom? Jason whispered to Yuria. A smile tugged at her lips in a manner of speaking. They'll take us both. Now our resonance bond is too scientifically valuable to leave behind. So I'm still just a lab rat, but at least I'm an interesting one. Yuria's expression softened as she helped him to his feet. You're far more than that, Jason Archer. You just proved humanity's worth to the most powerful alliance in the known galaxy. As they limped toward the Coalition vessel, the resonance patterns on their skin pulsed in unison, visible proof of a connection that transcended species, politics, and even the cold calculations of interstellar diplomacy. The Coalition research facility orbiting an unnamed gas giant was a marvel of engineering. A massive ring structure with spokes extending inward toward a central hub through the viewport of their quarters. Jason watched iridescent storms swirl across the planet's surface, bands of amber and violet gases creating hypnotic patterns. Beautiful, isn't it? Yuria asked, joining him at the window. My people have a saying, the universe reveals its secrets to those who survive its tests. Jason smiled, though the movement pulled at the healing tissue along his ribs. The Coalition's medical technology had accelerated his recovery, but 3 days hadn't completely erased the damage from the Void Hunter's attack. I'd say we passed that test, he replied, turning to Phaser. The resonance patterns on their skin had faded somewhat but remained visible, a permanent reminder of their connection. The Coalition scientists had been fascinated, subjecting them to endless scans and tests since their arrival. The Coalition's science directorate is certainly intrigued by us, Yuria agreed, her expression troubled. Perhaps too intrigued. What do you mean? She hesitated, glancing toward the door of their shared quarters. I overheard something today. The research director Nilith was arguing with someone about Protocol 7 Alpha, which is, I don't know exactly, she admitted, but I heard my name and then yours, followed by the phrase bond severance procedure. A chill ran through Jason. That had nothing to do with the station's temperature. They want to break our connection, it appears. So Yuria moved closer, her hand finding his. The resonance patterns brightened at the contact. Jason, I don't think we're the first. What human Therian pair to form a resonance bond before Jason could respond, the door to their quarters slid open. A tall, willowy figure entered. Director Nilith, head of the research team, studying them. His elongated features and pale blue skin marked him As Alarion, one of the founding species of the coalition, Commander Ilaria. Specialist Archer, he greeted them formally. I trust you're finding your accommodations. Satisfactory, quite, Yuria replied, her hand slipping from Jason's. Though we're curious about the purpose of tomorrow's procedure. Nyl's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his large pupilless eyes. A simple calibration of your resonance patterns. Nothing to concern yourselves with respect, Director Jason interjected. We'd like more information before agreeing to any procedures. The Alterion regarded him with cool assessment. Your agreement is appreciated but not required. Specialist Archer, coalition protocols are quite clear regarding research subjects of scientific significance. We're officers, not lab specimens, Yuria said, her voice taking on an edge Jason hadn't heard before. Of course, Nalith conceded smoothly, which is why I've come personally to inform you that the procedure has been moved forward. You'll report to Laboratory 7 in 1 hour. After the director left, Jason turned to Yuria. We need to find out what this bond severance really means. Agreed, she said, moving to the small console in their quarters, and I think I know how. Her fingers danced across the interface, bypassing security protocols with practiced ease. Being in Void Hunter tracking has its advantages. High clearance. Within minutes she had accessed the facility's restricted archives there, she said, pointing to a file labeled Historical Resonance Phenomenon. The file opened to reveal images that made them both gasp. Photographs are actual physical photographs from what appeared to be Earth's 19th century, showing a human man and a Theoran woman with unmistakable resonance patterns visible on their skin. This is impossible, Jason whispered. Humans didn't have contact with alien species until 50 years ago. Official contact, Yuria corrected, scrolling through the file. According to this, there have been at least 7 documented cases of human Theoran resonance bonds throughout Earth's history. The implications staggered Jason. Your people have been visiting Earth for centuries apparently, she murmured, continuing to read. Small research teams, observational missions only, but in each case there was unexpected contact. Jason leaned closer, reading over her shoulder, and in each case the coalition forcibly separated the pairs. The bond severance procedure, Yuria confirmed grimly, it's designed to disrupt the bioenergetic connection between bonded individuals. Does it say what happens to the subjects afterward? Her golden eyes met his, filled with concern. The human subjects were returned to Earth with modified memories. The Theorian officers were reassigned to deep space postings. Convenient, Jason said bitterly. Keep them far apart to prevent any chance of reconnection. Yuria continued scanning the document, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Jason, there's more. The procedure has a 40% mortality rate for human subjects. The words hung in the air between them. Jason felt his chest tighten. They're willing to risk killing me to keep this secret. The coalition values stability above all, Yuria said quietly. Human theory and bonds represent an uncontrolled variable in interspecies relations because they can't control who forms attachments to whom. Jason realized it threatens their careful diplomatic balance. Precisely. Yuria closed the file and turned to face him fully. Jason, we have less than an hour before they come for us. He took her hands in his, feeling